Hello and welcome back to Stratacombs. Doing a quick follow-up. Had a question about some tips on magnetizing this knob. Wanted to throw out a couple things that I glossed over in that first video. First, tools. Handy little pin vise with the proper size bit for my 1/16 magnet size. I mainly use the 1/16 diameter magnets, but I do have these little 2.5 millimeter ball magnets that I used for the arm and neck sockets. So in the head and in the arms, I placed those mainly because they fit into those little holes so nicely, and I didn't have to do as much fill in. So on all the heads and the arms, I used those. And then I used as long as a magnet as I could, as big as a magnet. I could have done bigger in these, but really trying to keep it to a certain size to get that proper attraction force. So here in the neck, that is a little set into the model because I used the longer magnet to extend through the neck piece. It had to be recessed in there a little bit. And so when I started with that hole and lining these neck pieces up. Got that hole, and I kind of put the neck piece in there and drilled right through to get it started, the first one. And then when I went through for the second one, I put the other neck piece, which I can't find right now, in place and held it, and then I started drilling from the back to get the hole started, so made sure it lined up. And then I put those magnets in there and did not glue them yet. And then once I had started with the head, I got that little, I set the ball in there to make sure the polarity was right. And then I took the head and I set it in there and lined it up, made sure it was all good. I liked it, so then I put some glue in the head. And then with that ball on there, I just set that in there and held it in place long enough. Had to be very careful to not get glue around the edge so that it glued to that piece, of course. And then once it kind of set, if you don't try to pull the magnet straight out, it might break the still setting super glue bond. So I just went and kind of lifted it. If you go more of a shear than a pull, you have a better chance of pulling that magnet off, and then let that set and cure. Keep going on. The arms are pretty similar. I started off and lined it up like you were going to glue it together, and then just kind of like was peeking in there. Where's that hole? I did put a little tack in, like the tacky blue tack type stuff in here, and put it on there to try to get a better outline. And once I was really confident where that hole was going to line up, I drilled the hole, slipped the magnet in there without glue, put the ball on there like that, and then mounted the arm on there. Made sure it was all good. That one slipped in pretty easy, right into place. Didn't have much problems. On the other side arm, I did have to trim into that little socket in there so that it would that ball would line up where I ended up drilling that hole. So that hole was a little off, so I had to do a little sculpting around there, excuse me, to get that lined up there all nice. I'm not planning on probably gluing these little hoses to the backpack, so you can switch it out. But again, this also allows for a little bit more like posability on this guy. You can kind of raise his axe, but the more fiddly piece on this is getting into your weapon. So here, that's a 1/16 by 1/32 magnets. That's one of the very thin magnets in there because you don't have much room. So in order to make up a stronger bond, I did put the 1/8 and I drilled down the 1/8 length. So that is a 1/16 by 1/8 sunk down in there pretty deep to really hold on that. Another thing is there's this little guide piece, this little tab that sticks out to kind of line up with this slot in here. I did trim that down a little bit once I had the magnets in place, because otherwise it was like, wasn't lying flat, it was like lifting up. So I had to kind of do a little trimming in there, but just on the little piece that sticks up, I did carve that back so I could line that magnet up. And then for the scopes, the back little groove is where I used to kind of slot that hole. And so on that one, oh, it's not using it, throw it on the backpack. And this one, those are pretty much identical. So I drilled the small one first, lined it up, put the magnet in there. Once I was comfortable with that, I glued those in place. And then I started working on the bigger scope and got it to set in place. For the backpack, I just kind of lined it up where I thought I'd want the two scopes to be able to lie. Test fitted them both. I already had the magnet in the scope first, and then I drilled the hole in the backpack. Again, that's the longer magnet in the backpack with the shorter magnets in the little scope. I guess one other thing on the tools. So I did have one of these. As you can see, the difference in the chuck on these. This one is more of a traditional type drill chuck. Has the 3 pieces that come in there. This holds really well, and will hold a little bit bigger drill bit than this style, which is like it works all right. And I ended up having a use for this as like a handle for other little mini files and stuff. So that's not too bad. But yeah, make sure you get a good chuck on your little drill vise. And if you need to go bigger than 1/8 drill bit size, you're probably going to want to get a bigger one of these as well to have. I have one coming so I can do some of my terrain pieces magnetized. Really, it's about lining up things, making sure you're comfortable with it. Magnets, your magnet sizes. I guess that's one piece to really pay attention to, is the polarity of these. So I put that first magnet in there, and then I took my other set of magnets and made sure that it was in the right polarity. And then when taking that, you could either just leave that in place and try to slide the new piece onto it, or you can take it's not wanting to come off there. I used like my X-Acto blade, but stuck it to it, made sure it was the right polarity. And then stuck it in the piece, and then again test fitted that. Did a test fit before putting any glue to make sure that was all right. And then once I started, I used that magnet as my base for the polarity to make sure they all lined up. So since that flows through, this will also, any of these should stick to any of these, not that you need to, but just good practice to keep your polarities matching. If you want, it might be a good idea to make a little tool to where you have a magnet or two marked as north and south, and then you can just check and see, make sure you know which polarity you're dealing with as well. But yeah, if you have any other questions or would like details on any specific part of this process that I dealt with, please let me know, and we'll see about getting another video up.